Well, even if it's not Brian, the case is not necessarily closed. We still have no idea whether or not he had any help from his parents or God knows who else. We don't know if he killed himself, if it was an accident, and we still don't know why Gabby was murdered. So will her family ever get the closure, or at least the answers that they deserve? Let's meet tonight's panel. We've got Power the Future co-founder and executive director Daniel Turner is here. I believe it's in Washington, D.C. I believe that's what that dome means. We've got Democrat strategist, radio host, and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall in a wall of bleu, and Foundation for Economic Education content manager and host of the Based podcast. It is Hannah Cox. Welcome back, Hannah, and welcome everyone. Welcome back to everybody, including me.
Hey, Kennedy.
So great to be here. Thank you so much. So, Daniel, what did you take away from what you've heard about some of the discoveries today?
Yeah, one of the interesting things that the investigators said is they found remains of 5 other individuals, and that's hopefully closure for...
That's a good point, because I was fascinated by that as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned, does Gabby's family get closure? Well, there are 5 other families and multiple other families that have had no closure, and you know, I'm glad this case is getting attention for her sake, her family's sake. But who are these 5 people, and how come social media gets to drive FBI resources, right? So kudos to Gabby's family for bringing this into the national attention and for really making this a national story. But there are lots of missing people, men and women, young and old, who don't get any of this coverage. And I just wonder how the FBI allocates its resources depending upon fame or fortune.
Well, Lord
or
knows
just
they have enough money and power. So, Leslie, maybe this can do a world of good. You know, maybe even if there is some public interest in some of these cold cases, that social media can help to revitalize them and either bring some of these people home or bring closure to families who have been left in limbo for sometimes years.
I was just watching something recently about these sleuths online who are actually helping to solve cold cases. So, yeah, I think it can do a lot of good. I'm glad you brought up the multiple bodies there. We don't know that this is Brian. Obviously, forensics will, in the coroner's report, will determine that. And we don't know if it is, in fact, Brian, if he took his life, if Gator got him, if somebody else got him. And, you know, you asked Kennedy about closure for the family. The only way they're going to get closure, if this is him, is if he left some kind of a diary, a journal, or a note behind, and if that is left, if his family didn't get to that, if there is such an article.
Yeah, and his family, you know, it seems as though they spotted a bag and they put an object in the bag, which is weird that they were out there just sort of poking around, picking up evidence themselves, Hannah.
It's very weird. The timing is very odd to me. I think that we certainly can't trust anything that's coming out of these parents' mouths. But I think more importantly, what this case is showing us is just how incompetent our law enforcement actually is. Despite all of their spying on us, despite how big the government is, despite all of the punitiveness we have towards people in our prison system, at the end of the day, we are still really, really bad at preventing and solving violent crime. In fact, we consistently see social media sleuths being better able to solve crimes via podcasts and other true crime documentaries than actual law enforcement. So at this point, if I go missing, I've told my parents they should just go to social media versus the law enforcement. How they let this guy get away in the first place is inexcusable. It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, and I thought Maureen brought up a great point. You know, the amount of money, the amount of manpower, the number of people who are employed by federal and local law enforcement who have tried to find this guy completely dwarfs what it would have cost to keep an eye on him because, Daniel, it's always the boyfriend or the husband.
And you know what? You said you've seen sightings of him all around the world. Not all bald guys look alike. I find that very offensive. Just because you saw a bald guy doesn't mean it's Brian Laundrie.
Yes, and you've been accused several times, and now you can breathe a sigh of relief, Daniel, which I think is fantastic. And I hope people keep talking about this. I hope it's not like, you know, one of those stories or one of those fads where people stop talking and people stop worrying about women in abusive relationships that just go missing. Their names and their stories should not be forgotten. And if that is the legacy here, I think that has, her life has meant something more than even the people who knew her could have imagined. So I know it is dark, and I know it's a hard day, especially for the Petitos, because they still deserve those answers. All right, the party panel is going to stick around. Republican Glenn Youngkin is running on tax cuts and promise of more charter schools. Parents like that. Is this race a barometer of what's to come in the 2022 midterms? The party panel is back. Daniel Turner, Leslie Marshall, and Hannah Cox. So, Daniel, just over the last 10 days, we have seen this race tighten. It was 5 points and then 3 points, and now Monmouth has them at 46 apiece. Is this because Terry McAuliffe is imploding, or there is some national distrust for establishment Democrats?
I think Terry McAuliffe is imploding. I don't think he understands what's happening in Virginia. You mentioned education. That seems to be the real subject. And he has gone off topic with that, saying parents don't have a right to know what their kids are learning in classrooms. I also think Terry McAuliffe was angry in that interview because he's used to the media carrying their water for him, right? Just a couple days ago, Nancy Pelosi yelled at the press similarly. She said, you should be doing a better job selling this spending bill, right? I mean, establishment Democrats are accustomed to the media doing a lot of the work for them, and there is no more establishment Democrat than Terry McAuliffe.
And all members of the media should be asking questions. There should be much more objectivity, but obviously, Leslie, this is an important race, and Virginia is always seen as a bellwether for the coming year for national races. How important is the Virginia governor's race?
Virginia governor's race is very important, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, obviously. But if Youngkin were doing that well, and if McAuliffe were really sinking, it wouldn't be tied. McAuliffe would be underwater. They are neck and neck. They're a reflection of what we see not only in Virginia, but some other states where you have a split. Virginia, the northern part of the state are Democrats. The southern part are more Republicans. And this is also kind of a race between Joe Biden lovers and Donald Trump lovers, not just Democrats and Republicans. I want to say something about that interview, though, because, Kennedy, like you, I interviewed, but not on my own television show, my own radio show. And there have been times where, and, we have it on visually, there are times that, I'll ask a question, they answer, and then they're like, okay, thank you. And I'm like, but wait. And their assistant told me 20 minutes, and then they're like, no, 10. Their schedule got crazy. We got to cut it short. I didn't see it as he was getting up because of the question. I saw him look up at maybe one of his handlers who said, we gotta go. He answered questions prior to that posed. I didn't take it as that. Then again, if you're neck and neck, maybe you want to stick around and answer more questions so people can get a better feel for you.
Glenn Youngkin being an anti-vaxxer and being pro-Trump and all this stuff, which, that's not necessarily helping him. That kind of stuff, and I know Gavin Newsom had some success with that in his recall election in California, but, when you've got parents who are showing up in droves at school board meetings and a former governor who wants the job again saying parents shouldn't be in the classroom, they want some clarification, and I don't think they feel that they've had that. Plus, Hannah, which, delights those of us who follow politics every day, he is a gaffe machine, isn't he?
He is a walking gaffe machine, and if I were him, I wouldn't want to answer these tough questions either because his policies are losing answers. This race is something that Democrats, I think, are trying to make about Joe Biden versus Trump, but it's really not. I think this race comes down to education. It's the first time parents in this country are going to get to have a say in what has happened to them and their families and their children over the past year and a half. And I think there is a lot of cause for people who are against parents' involvement with their own children's education, who are against school choice, who are against options in this country, and who are pro things like lockdowns, masking children 8 hours a day, forcing vaccines on them, to be concerned, because we know that these are unpopular, and we know that when people get the chance to actually speak up for themselves, they will. I think that we see finally people waking up to the problems with our education system at whole. There's a great opportunity for change, and I think that's what the left has to fear here, because they're on the wrong side of this issue.
They're on the wrong side when it comes to education in so many aspects. And, that's the worry. And it seems like it's really bad political judgment to try and keep parents out of the education conversation. And when parents get a whiff of that, Daniel, they start to get really nervous because they've already been investigating all the other options. They've already been looking at private schools and charter schools and homeschooling for over a year and a half now. And if they have teachers unions who are controlling politicians who are saying things like, yeah, you know, we really don't want parents to be involved, I think that's where you draw a line, and it's not good political intuition.
No, it's not. And I think school choice is really a winning issue for anyone who embraces it, regardless of their political party. Parents do want that choice. Terry McAuliffe sent his kids to private school. I don't begrudge him that. He's a wealthy man. I went to parochial school. My parents had that luxury, and it was part of their faith upbringing. But a lot of families don't have that choice. And there are families whose kids are stuck in these schools, and then to say, not only will we not give you the choice to go to another school, but we won't even let you know what's happening in the classroom. That's some scary stuff for parents. And Terry McAuliffe is really on the wrong side of this argument. Parents are standing up and fighting back, and this probably is going to cost them the election.
We'll see. So how does this turn out, Leslie? Because the polls are tightening. How does Terry McAuliffe turn this around?
Again, if school choice were the end-all and be-all for Virginia or parents across the board, you wouldn't see Governor Abbott maybe having to look for another job in the next gubernatorial election in Texas, a red state with very similar ideas to Youngkin. And Youngkin would be leading. School choice would be leading. It would not be tied. And the reason is people know reality. The reality is that no governor of any state makes 100% decisions for the public school system in that state. I don't care what state you're in. Local school districts certainly have power. Parents do have power, clearly, and school choice is not the end-all and be-all answer for every parent. Just ask people that have taken their kids out of one school into private or to charter schools, and they haven't seen the success, and they haven't seen some programs that they want into the school system, or programs they're not comfortable with taking out.
Yeah, that's one of the metrics that you'll see over and over and over again. When you actually include parents in the discussion, they're very happy with charter schools. They're very happy when they do have a choice, and when they have been completely underserved by teachers unions and the public school system, it is the end all, because they're going to end all interface with public school because it has done their children such a great disservice. Party panel, thank you so much. Daniel, Leslie, and Hannah, way to hump night, party people.